I don't know if I call them socialists, but you certainly have populist nationalists. We can put the Bannon, Tucker on kind of that side.
That's remarkable. That's unbelievable. And that's what I've been saying. The populist left and the populist right have to come together to fight against the oligarchy, and then we can get back to fighting each other. I can't wait to get back to us fighting a bunch of left-right issues, but the issues we're fighting over right now are not left-right issues. It's us against them issues. So spending $742 billion on war every year, while people are under mountains of student debt, have no health care, and will live paycheck to paycheck, that's not a left-right issue. That's a top-down, that's us against them issue. Stopping the wars and investing that money back home, that's not a left-right issue. An infrastructure, building back America, that's not a left-right issue. Trump promised it, Obama promised it, Biden promised it. None of them are fucking doing it. It's not a left-right issue. It's them against us.
This whole term of left and right, because really where it even came from, where it came from was just who sat in the chamber. I think it was in France,
right?
And which political party sat on the right side of the chamber and which political party sat on the left side of the chamber. And so then they would just say, okay, these are the right, and this, the right says this and the left says this. And what's interesting though is that from country to country, the alignments of who would have aligned with the left in France in that original time era and the right in France, that even shifted. Like a lot of people say, for example, that now I'm going to get into real murky territory here, but a lot of people say that, like Nazis, like, Nazi Germany and like Mussolini, that the fascists, right? So the fascism comes from the right. But actually, when you study history, back in Italy and in Germany during those days, they didn't really have a right-wing party by our definitions of what we would consider right-wing. Because for us, right-wing is like, I would say just deregulating everything, right? Like deregulating, just not having really any programs. It's like to each their own, right? Like full on, just go out there and survive, best of luck to you. Right. Like, we don't know nothing for the people. Like you're on your own. Freedom is the name of the game. And that's it. It's, and this is the Hunger Games now. So the right, back in those eras with Italy and Germany, there actually wasn't that type of right-wing party. They had socialists that called, the parties that called themselves socialist, and then they had communist, actually. So for them, left-wing parties in those countries were actually communist. And to the right of them were those who were not wanting to go as far as communism, and those were the fascists. And Mussolini was actually the one who coined the term fascism, and it had nothing to do with racism, actually, because Mussolini didn't have that in his party at all. For him, it was nationalism, Italian pride, Italian nationalism. And then Hitler, of course, took it into a different direction of racism. But the fascists actually were, by today's standards, maybe more left-wing than our modern day right-wing parties.
I mean, obviously the word socialist carries a lot of baggage from the Cold War. It evokes on purpose the Soviet Union or, Castro or Chavez, Pol Pot, people like that, kind of the Mao. But I think what you're seeing is this kind of hybrid socialism that really is about nothing more than trying to sandpaper the edges off of neoliberalism. And I, would describe a lot of people on the right as being socialists. I would consider Steve Bannon to be a socialist. I would consider the 2016 iteration of Donald Trump, the candidate, to be a socialist based on what he was saying. I consider Tucker Carlson to be a socialist. Now if you have Governor Cuomo, who wants to give, tens of millions of dollars to Amazon to bring an office to New York, you have AOC, an actual self-identified socialist, standing up and saying, this is outrageous. And then you have Tucker Carlson going on his Fox News program and saying, I agree with her completely, because I think people are realizing that neoliberalism doesn't work. And I think the real right-left difference, to the extent that those terms even have any currency or coherence. I think you see in France too, like Marine Le Pen, you know, the fascist far right candidate, when she ran both times, she ran to the left of Macron for sure, but even the French socialists in terms of wanting to give workers better benefits and better pensions. So I think the vision is, you know, you have this kind of right-wing populism, which really is socialism, that says we should close our borders, not allow unconstrained immigration, and then take better care of our own working class people and not allow this kind of transnational global corporatist elite to take everything for themselves under the guise of neoliberalism. We should distribute that more to workers, which is basically what Bernie Sanders was saying.
Right.
You know, 10 years ago, the left in America, in the United States, was always anti-immigration. When I started writing about politics, open borders was considered to be a Koch brothers Chamber of Commerce plot that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were pushing because it would help American businesses by increasing the flow of labor and driving down wages. And the left,
cheaper labor.
yeah.
So, Christian, basically, like asking the question, I was going to answer the question before we got to it. It's pretty amazing. We had a question exactly teed up around what you started to get into, because the word is realignment that we hear a lot being thrown around. That when you started talking about politics in the 90s, it was pretty clear liberal versus conservative, what that meant. Those terms seem to be completely antiquated and outdated to describe today, right? On one side, as you said, I don't know if I'd call them socialists, but you certainly have populist nationalists. We can put the Bannon, Tucker on kind of that side. And it doesn't fit neatly with Sanders. We can put him aside for a second, but very clearly on the other side of that, you have corporatists and globalists. And maybe that's what you're saying kind of synonymously for neoliberal as the way you look at this. So